All right, everybody, welcome. We have our special guest here today. It's not often that I have a lot of guests on the Club Junkie podcast. It's pretty much just me rambling on. But today, very special guest today because today is launch day for brand new Titleist TSR woods, which is super exciting. And I've got Stephanie Luttrell and JJ VanWezenbeeck. And, of course, I messed it up, even though right before this I asked for names and I still messed them up. But I've got both of them on the show today. Thank you guys so much for taking the time and hanging out a little bit today, and I'm super excited to talk about some new woods.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.
Yeah, so, TSR, I mean, it's kind of been an interesting thing. I mean, Titleist woods, I think right when the TS line, I mean, even really before the TS line, I mean, with Golf WRXers, Titleist woods have been huge. I mean, TSI was gigantic all through this year and into last year. They were, high on our Members' Choice Awards both years. The TS series before that was really big. What has been, I mean, as soon as TS came out, it seems like it kind of just catapulted Titleist forward. Kind of what was kind of the special recipe to kind of get to TS and then push it even further between TSI and now TSR?
Want me to lead that one off?
Yeah, start that one.
Well, our first generation of the Titleist Speed project was TS, and as we evolved it into TSI, it was just that next step of how do we apply advanced materials, how do we look at center of gravity positions, how do we look at new forms of adjustability to really allow us to enhance and bring better speed as well as distance and consistency to all players. And I think that translated through in terms of our tour usage as well as just the public opinion of Titleist drivers as well.
Yeah, and on my side, being a fitter on the PGA Tour, it was give me a really good-looking driver, a great-feeling driver, one that performs with really good launch to spin and is really fast. So it was kind of a big ask from our tour group, but what you've seen the R&D team do is deliver continually improved product, and so we've been the #1 driver on tour for 4 consecutive seasons. So you see that. And I don't know if the public always knows that, but that happens through performance, and that's what we've been able to keep getting improvements on.
Yeah, and with tour, I mean, I think, our guy Andrew Tursky, Greg Moore, they're always on a tour every week. I think they spoke to you even, and it was amazing how many players on the PGA Tour, at least, jumped right in to TSR, not only drivers, but fairways. I think they said even when they went that first day, I don't remember what tournament it was that first day, though, they said it was amazing. I mean, guys were raving about drivers, but they also raved about the fairways, and it was just, they saw a ton of them going into bags or being built for players. And I feel like even with TSI, TS, that adoption rate to those new products was super fast.
That's part of the R&D process for us in Titleist, as well as that JJ and I partner together. Our teams collaborate really closely. So throughout our development of new designs, we're constantly seeking feedback from the best players in the world. So having them come in and hit early prototypes for our drivers and our fairways, as well as our hybrids, and just continuing to make sure that we're closing the loop on that and ensuring that the designs really hit the sweet spot of what the player wants.
Yeah, when you look at the fact that we have a 2-year cycle, we have a really big advantage to spend the time and get all the details right. So, to steal from Bob Vokey, is we have one of the greatest R&D testing groups in the world, and that's our tour players on the PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, DP World, and we can spend time with them at TPI and at events, looking at shapes, getting feedback on performance, looking where the launch and spin characteristics are. So those players are highly involved throughout the development process and providing feedback to R&D. So by the time we get to launch, they're asking for the product rather than us trying to push it on them.
Yeah, I reflect even back to our early prototype testing in March, where we had some early samples and we were, seeking feedback, and we had at least, Will Zal, Cam Smith, and they were like, "Can I take this with me at the end of the day?" And we're like, "No, not quite yet. We're not there yet."
I think we wrote Cameron Young's name on his testing head and going, "This one's really, really good."
That's pretty interesting, because I think we all kind of have that idea of how often how early do those tour players get to see those products, and but like you said, I mean, with the testing side of it, it's got to be interesting because Stephanie, you mentioned the word designed a few times, and being a Titleist club, I mean, Titleist clubs are expected to look a certain way. They're supposed to have this, kind of, I'll call it a classic shape to them, and no matter how much tech is packed into there, coming out with something that would be wildly crazy shaped or whatever isn't really something that you'd expect. So how difficult is it to kind of say, here we have all these great tech ideas, now how do we get them into this package that looks really good, that not only tour players want to look at, but every player out there, whether you're a scratch player or a 10 handicap or a 30 handicap, how do you kind of get around getting all that tech into those kind of really desirable classic shapes?
Well, it's part of our strategy. We know who our customer is. We're golfers too, and so we like to look down at things that build our confidence in the rest position and look beautiful as well. But there's so much of shape that really drives performance as well. So throughout our exercise of shaping these heads, just even down to what we do with our toe shaping and sweeping this back so that we give the look of a visually open head without it actually having to be physically open, that helps inspire confidence in the address position. And we know that so much of our technology, it's under the hood. People really have to kind of go and do their digging and their research to understand how we've made TSR better than our prior generation of metals. But that's okay, because we ultimately know that people want to play golf with tools that are pleasing to them, right? And also help them perform better. And so that's really our focus, is how do we deliver on all of those elements to make sure that the golfer's satisfied.
Yeah, it's my job to make Josh Talge and Stephanie's job really hard. And, when you go down to like the amateur level and you see the counts at the USAM where Titleist drivers are the most chosen driver, is that better player wants a certain look, but they want a lot of performance. They want great ball speed. They want really good launch. They want forgiveness. So we really, you'd laugh how much time Stephanie and I talk about this corner of the driver and, her team measuring sound frequencies to get it to sound right. But the overall performance is what's going to drive it. And so what we want to do is when we get on the fitting tee with a player, that we have choices that is going to start in a really good position, and then the data is going to support why that's going to perform.
Yeah.
So much of it comes down to having model choice too. There's a reason we have 4 drivers in the lineup, because we identify that there are distinct player profiles, and we want to make sure that we're bringing forth the best performance in each chassis to meet that player's needs.
Yeah, and it is interesting because, when I was out there, I was fortunate to come out to TPI and get to hit this stuff a few weeks ago, and it was amazing because I am that guy. I'm miles away from ever being a tour player, competitive player, but there's certain shapes that I do like, and certain drivers you set them down, and right away kind of like, I really like this look, or there's something about it. And the nice thing with a person like myself who fits into more that TSR2 side, where a little more forgiveness, a little more launch. That driver, when you set it down, still kind of makes you feel like a player, because it isn't a wild shape. It doesn't look huge. It kind of makes you feel, like I said, confidence in it. And that part of it, especially to a player like me, I really like. But the other side is, like you said, you start getting under the hood, and there's a ton of tech that you're just not going to see on these drivers. Previously, with some of the other drivers, the 915s, the 17s, we've seen movable weights and things like that. And on this head, it's a little more sleek. There's not as much. There's still weights and there's still stuff there that you can see if you look. But if you just look at the kind of the sole of the driver, the crown of the driver, there's not much. It's very simple in a way, but there's a lot there. But tell me a little bit, why is that such a sleek look now? Because it is a little different than the previous generations of drivers.
Yeah, you had to be excited being a 2-player about how much better this generation and TSR2 is versus where we were before. But it's a great observation that you had just about how minimal in nature we've gone with the look of these products. A lot of that is being driven through our research into aerodynamics. We know that we're trying to, produce less drag, increase club head speed for all players, and by being able to really clean this up and make it super sleek, just even down to little things like the size of our hosel hole and the way that projects onto the sole. All of those things matter, and so we're paying attention to all of those details and adding them up in a way that it significantly increases speed for players. Also under the hood are just, our face insert technologies. It doesn't slam you in the face, but those are things that really have helped us with the 2 to expand the sweet spot size. So JJ observed that a lot with the players. Just the ball speed consistency and the launch and spin consistency on these drivers is incredible.
Yeah, and the 2 specifically in that model, it was about 20% of what we used on tour. We're already up to about 30% usage. So we're seeing a lot more players because of the shape changing. They might have been a little turned off to the previous shaping and loved the new one. Plus you add in the ball speed and the really good consistencies. We're seeing that increase in tour adoption in that model. So, you know, it's always key with your fitter is, I'm not a 4-person, I'm not a 3-person, I'm not a 2-person. It's, hey, just show me the performance. And so how do you make all 3 models feel great, look great, and now let the fitting drive you to the result?
Yeah. No, and I think you're right. I mean, the shape of it now, I mean, I don't think there's anybody who, maybe previously a person would want to jump into, say, TSI 3 over 2 just because of the look, even though they probably, I mean, I was kind of that person. I showed up at TPI with a TSI 3, and I hit it okay. It wasn't bad. I mean, I could get around the course, but the 2 allowed me to just be more consistent. You know, I mean, not only was it longer, but it allowed me to be more consistent. And I could get away with a few swings that I probably couldn't get away with as easily with TSI 3. But, you know, Steph, you mentioned Face Tech, and that is a huge story with these new drivers. And I think it's been kind of a huge story all across golf the past, you know, year and a half or going into the second year of these new faces. And I think face design has been really pushed with drivers. But you guys went about it a little differently than I think some other brands. And we've got 2 different faces in the drivers. It's not just one face technology fits all. We've kind of got 2 different faces depending on the driver. And explain a little bit what kind of what those faces are and kind of how they fit into each driver.
Right. Well, one of the keys for us is that we are always looking into new materials and researching materials. And so we leverage ATI 425, which is a high strength and high flexibility material, and it gives us a significant advantage in terms of our face insert designs. So we're able to go a lot thinner than where we've been before, also just expanding that sweet spot size. So in terms of the difference between our face insert designs, the 2 and the 4 both leverage what we call multi-plateau VFT. And what that means is that it starts with an incredibly thin perimeter, and we build up layer by layer internally to help us align CT, which is the USGA measurement and control over ball speed, really closely with face center. And what that does for the end user is it gives you maximum ball speed on center. But also, because of how thin that perimeter is, it's exceptionally forgiving across the face. So if you miss it, if you need more forgiveness across the face, the 2, it's really going to allow that to happen. And we leverage that technology in the 4 as well, because this product is our ultra-low spin chassis. It's also probably our most penalizing on off-center hits because of that forward CG and ultra-low spin characteristic. So bringing that multi-plateau allows it to really just preserve ball speed and make it even faster and allow that player to have more success and more distance with the 4. And then the 3, we've got a technology that is new to us called Speed Ring. And it essentially is a thickened perimeter, but it leads to more local deflection at face center. So we're seeing incredible ball speed on center for this player. And so if you're a player that is more consistent in your impact location, that 3 is really going to maximize your ball speed and your distance.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And then, you know, with JJ out on tour, I bet that's kind of an interesting to have kind of, you know, 3 drivers, 2 different faces, because there are players, I mean, we've heard about, I mean, as great as tour players are, they don't hit the dead center, I mean, every single time. I mean, they do hit, I mean, their toe miss hit is probably a little different than my toe miss hit, let's just be honest. But they still do, you know, miss the center a little bit. So, you know, having these kind of couple different designs, does that kind of help you and able to get certain players into a head that may fit their swing and their miss better than the previous version or the previous driver or the driver they may currently have?
Yeah, I mean, these are players that are incredibly well fit, and the key that we want to start with a fitting for a tour player is define better. So when we look at a player like a Justin Thomas, for example, who uses TSR 3, is he hits a lot of shots. So he has a very consistent impact location, but he likes the versatility of being able to hit a low cut, being able to hit a high draw. So kind of that sweet spot of forgiveness for him in TSR 3, so he can take advantage of the ball speed, we can take advantage of sure fit nozzle, but he also has some ability to kind of shape shots into fairways that they want, versus other tour players that are just looking to swing hard and they are looking for the consistency of a TSR 2, and then having TSR 4 for the player that fights a little spin. Now we're able to bring the spin down with still really good launch and get them in a condition to maximize distance. So every time we're in meetings on whether it's iron models or wedge models or fairway wood models, is we know that what we need to fit everybody, so we want to have everything on the table.
Yeah. And with the, you mentioned, TSR 4 now. I think the TSI 4 previously was a little bit of an intimidating driver. It didn't fit a ton of players, it feels like. We didn't see, even in the Golf WRX world, which everybody here is, high swing speed, high spin. It was a driver that was a little intimidating and all that. But it seems like the TSI or TSR 4 now does have kind of the ability to fit a much wider range of players. And I would assume you're probably going to see that on tour a little bit as well. Or there were people on tour with the 4, previously the TSI 4, but with this new TSR 4, kind of what is it about this head that now kind of, because jokingly at TPI, is like you can kind of make it a 3.5. So what kind of about that head makes it kind of a lot more versatile and maybe a little more popular going forward than its predecessor?
Well, you're spot on. It was more of a one-dimensional golf club in the past, in that it had an incredibly low and forward CG. So it was intended to be for that player that needed aggressive spin reduction, that it was going to kill their spin and bring and maximize their distance because of that. But through discussion that we had with Tour, and this is where this collaboration that we have is so important and vital, we had talks about Tour would really like to see a head that had spin adjustability. And when we put our engineering, thinking caps on, we said, the 4 is probably the best model and option for us to do that in. It's still our 430 cc, so we've got a little bit more mass that we can play with. And so we've brought now kind of a dual flat weight system into this head. And with a heavyweight forward, the low and forward CG, it launches and it spins like a TSI 4, so it's still that aggressively low spin. But when we go and we knock that heavy weight towards the back and flip the weights, you end up with a TSR 3 type performance. So if you have a player that likes to have a smaller head shape, we can dial that in. Or if you're a player that needs spin between a TSR 3 and a TSR 4, because we have flat weight options, you can absolutely dial that in as well. So I think it's been fun for you guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, as a fitter, options are fun, and what we've tried to do over the years is allow what we can do on the tour van to drive what we can do on the fitting tee. So when you look at SureFit hosel, we used to bend titanium drivers. Yeah. It was really hard to do. It was hard to go backwards. So if you showed somebody what flatter line angle looked like, it was really hard to get them back to where they were previously. So that drove us to SureFit hosel. We were putting weight, heel and toe on drivers. That leads to SureFit track. So what we found with the success of TSI 3 on tour is a few players probably fit to the 4. They like the look of the 3 better. But man, our spins are kind of right in between. 4 is a little too far, 3 is not quite enough. And so that was kind of where we were asking for this of, I want everything. So, and the power to do it on the fitting tee and to show them A versus B and how that power right there versus, hey, I'll go make a different head. We'll put the glue in a little different spot. We'll try to maybe soften the shaft to make the 4 work. Or, hey, we might try the opposite on a 3. Mm-hmm. The ability to do it right on the tee for a player and show them that is really powerful as a fitter.
Yeah, and the fitting side, I mean, as much as, still majority of golfers unfortunately don't get fit, but the fitting has gotten so much bigger that it is kind of, like you said, to give your fitter an option. When you go in, you're not just kind of pigeonholed into one driver and that's it. All of these, all 3 heads, there's a chance that you could fit into any one of them in a sense. Depending on how you deliver the club head to the ball and, the launch conditions, all that. Because when I was there, my fitter, he was an awesome guy, but he was like, I'm probably a TSR 2 guy. And he goes, that's fine, but we're going to try all 3. And I was like, well, we can probably skip the 4. I don't think I have the skill to bring that, But it was amazing that I was able to hit it. And yes, it wasn't the best for me in terms of, launch conditions. I didn't need that low spin, but it was amazing that, the fitter has those options that they can really dial in that player because, every head may have a chance to make it into your bag depending on, things even that you don't know about your swing that, your fitter will kind of notice and play around with. But it was kind of fun to hit all 3 and could kind of see that, hey, you know what? It was worth it to hit it. Yes, it didn't work out, but, I can see where for a player who's not expecting it, a TSR 4 could easily make it in the bag.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely why you want to get fit. You have 3 models here. You know, we have 5 CG locations on the 3, we have 2 on the 4, and then you have 16 hosel settings with 4 different lofts. Take shaft out of it, you got a pretty big list to start, so let that fitter narrow that choice for you. Use your tendencies on where you tend to miss it. I tend to get spinny, I need to pick up distance, I need to pick up accuracy to help your scores, because that's where the fitter really can help drive. The end goal of this is to have more fun on the course, which is often driven by lower scores. So let them get you there. And I think most people will be amazed going through the process with TSR how quickly you can get there. You know, that you don't need 500 swings to get there, and that when you get there, how much longer and straighter you're going to be.
Yeah, no, it definitely was kind of an amazing thing. It was when you know, we kind of dialed in that last setting and hit it on the range. It was just, you know, I kind of knew right then, like, that was the one, you know, like TSR2 was like, there's all the specs. It was dialed in. It was perfect. And, you know, hitting shots there, it was just like, I think the next 3 balls were just absolutely perfect. And you're like, it is amazing when you actually find it and the light bulb goes off and you just look back at your fitter and kind of go, man, that's really, really good. And you both kind of know right away, hey, you found it. And then, you know, some of the, you know, you mentioned the face tech, all that. I will say that there's one thing, and I think, you know, I brought it up when I was out there at TPI, but I know a lot of our audience, it was a question of, you know, you said, you know, materials. This is an all titanium head. There is no carbon fiber on it, anything like that. You know, you had a great answer, and what was the reason that there is not a carbon crown or carbon anywhere really on the head? Because I think a lot of people might have expected that to happen with this TSR line.
Yeah, we're constantly looking at new material applications and how do we make the best performing product that we can. And as we mentioned before, so much of what we do is under the hood, but we have the thinnest titanium crown of anyone in the industry, and that allows us to come within essentially a gram of, once you bond in panels and the ledge that is required for composite, the mass properties end up in a very similar spot. And we believe that through the homogeneous all titanium construction, we can actually dial in a better player preferred acoustic. We can hit our mass properties. We also believe that it gives us kind of the ability to make a better product at this point in time. But our R&D engineers, we're always looking at what's the next frontier, and expect that, you know, we're going to keep searching for that and look at how do we make a better product. But we're not going to bring technology that doesn't make sense to make a better performance product.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, I think, you're not just going to slap a flashy carbon fiber crown on there if it doesn't necessarily help with the performance of the club. And then, you know, the drivers were absolutely amazing. And then we got into fairway woods, and the fairway woods have been, you know, I think JJ, like I said, Andrew told me he was kind of shocked to see how many, you know, always when there's a new driver, everybody wants to try one, everybody's getting one built. But he said it was amazing how many, you know, fairway woods he saw kind of going out of the truck that first day, and people really wanted to hit them. What is it on tour that guys were guys were loving about the new fairway woods?
Yeah, Tom Bennett, who works for Stephanie and is in charge of our fairway design, it's hard to get him excited. He always feels like he gets run over by drivers, and all of a sudden there's this buzz about fairway woods. And, you know, it starts again at address. How do you get great looking fairway woods, spending a lot of time on shaping and leading edge and how it sits on the ground and confidence inspiring. Then when you hit it, the feel off the face is really important. And the huge one on this one was the flight that it created. You know, I think every fitter on the planet will tell you the 3-wood is the hardest club to fit. And it's because it has to do so many things. It has to launch really good off the tee with not a lot of spin. It has to have the ability to shape both directions, but it's got to launch off the ground with the right amount of spin to control into holes. So it has to do a lot. And that's a difficult thing to do for even the best players in the world. It's why you see some players keep fairway woods around for a long time. And to see a player like a Jordan Spieth the first week go, oh my gosh, this is checking a lot of boxes for me. And, you know, just every swing gets better and better. And then having those 3 models where we've added a model to the lineup gives us a lot of versatility, having the TSR3, the TSR2, and now the 2+.
Yeah, and the 2+ is interesting. I mean, it's That's kind of the new one there. I mean, I know a lot of people, especially on our site, after we saw photos from the tour, everybody really excited about what is 2 Plus. You know, kind of what is this thing? It's, like you said, it's something new, a new head to the line. It hasn't been something that we saw in TSI, or just TS or TSI. What exactly is kind of the TSR 2 Plus?
Well, it was being born of, the conversations that we have about what are the specific player needs. And JJ came back to us and he said, I think there's a player that predominantly uses 3-wood off the tee. Still needs it from the fairway sometimes, but is there a way for us to tee optimize a fairway wood? And so Tom and the team, they went back and they just said, okay, let's make a larger volume head. How do we get that center of gravity as deep and as low as possible so that we can increase flight? As we talked about, when fairway woods go high, they also, perception as well as actual, they go a lot further for players. So we wanted to build that confidence in the address position, bring that larger footprint, but also make sure that it's not a mini driver. It's a product that can still very playable from the turf. But I think the most surprising thing is, we're making it in one loft. It's a 13-degree head, but I encourage a lot of players to hit it that would never think they could hit a 13-degree head because of where we've placed that CG so low and so deep, and it's our highest inertia fairway wood we've ever made. It's incredibly stable. Off the tee performance, it gets up in the air, and I think you had some players that just weren't even looking in the right window when they were looking downrange.
Yeah, I mean, the great tour story on TSR 2 Plus was Will Zalatoris. He was in a 16.5 TSI 3 in a D1 setting, so taking a little loft off it, was always a player who can get really down on it, was always looking for a little launch and a little spin, and what him and his team looks at their statistics and deep dive into how many 3-woods am I hitting off the tee versus into fairways. He's like, I think I want for certain golf courses, especially one I tend to play in April that require a little more draw on some tee shots, something for that. Can we work this summer to get ready for them then? And we took a R2 plus 13, put it D4, added a little loft, and he's just like, this thing's not going to get airborne. And he hits the first one, and his eyes go here, and the ball's here, and he looks back at me, and he's like, what happened there? And he, again, confidence inspiring, hits more and more, puts it in at the Scottish Open, the Open Championship for the first time, his first week hitting it. And it hasn't come out of the bag since because he's like, I can hit this off the ground. I can hit it off the tee. It allows him to shape it right to left versus driver that's left to right. It does so much, and it's so confident inspiring that it fit a great spot for him.
Yeah, because I was one of those people, I mean, I don't hit a very high ball. And I think I had a 13.5 TS 3-wood back, years ago. And it was one of those that, if I could hit it off the tee, I could get it up in the air enough, and it went a long way, and it was fine, but there was no way I was ever going to attempt to hit that thing off the deck. It would have went 4 feet in the air, and that's it. And I was kind of shocked as well, because when it was handed to me, I was the same thing, saying, there's no way I'm going to be able to hit this. It's a 13, it's just too low a loft. I'm like a 3-wood, maybe even 4-wood guy. And it was amazing how easy that was to elevate, whether it was off the tee or even hitting a couple off the turf. It was really easy to launch. And like you said, 70, it's not a mini driver. Because to me, a mini driver, I can never hit a mini driver off the deck. I know some players can, whether they're higher speed players, whatever. I could never do that. This was one of those clubs that I could hit it off the deck. I could hit it off the tee. It was a really versatile club. And it was a little bigger. It kind of gave you a little bit of confidence when you stood over it, knowing that you had a little extra mass there. But it's also a pretty low spin head, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a product of what we've been able to do with our internal construction on all of our fairway woods is one of our design goals was how do we make the ball go higher? Well, we need to drop that center of gravity as low as possible. And all 3 models are the lowest center of gravity positions we've had in each of the distinct models to date. And that's pairing it with higher inertia. And so the fact that they're incredibly stable and low CG, the ball gets up in the air. We're able to control spin to the optimal level for players to really drive distance and consistency for them downrange.
Yeah, and across the line, I mean, I think when you get into the TSR 2, the standard 2, and even the 3, I thought, the whole line, it's so much easier to get up in the air off the turf. And like I said, I'm a person that was never a shot I really loved to hit. If I was going to hit a 3-wood off the deck, it was on a par 5 where there was really not a whole lot of trouble up there. I could just kind of get it up around the green, and if it had to roll and release out a bit, that's fine. And these new ones, it was, the first ball I hit, I think, it was, kind of how you described Will, JJ. I was not even looking to where that ball was going because I didn't expect it to go that high. I thought, okay, a little higher, I'll look a little higher. And no, it was up in the air, but distance-wise, they're extremely long. And the other thing I really noticed when I was at a TPI that I really liked was, you always talk about, the shaping and all that, where for me, I felt like, especially with TS, when you added a little loft, the face looked like it got a little shut. And with these new ones, I think my 5-wood has a little added loft on it when I got fit, but it doesn't look shut. Like, it still looks square. It doesn't have, because I'm a guy who hits it left, but it still looks square. Like, it doesn't look like the face is shut. And to me, the shaping of the new TSRs really does, to me, fit my eye a little better than the previous models.
Yeah, again, I think with Stephanie and Tom and the tour department, we spend a lot of time because, hey, sometimes they bring in samples that are way too open, so you got to find that sweet spot where they look square and they look square no matter where you're moving that loft. And then we have those options because we have a 16.5. We're one of the few companies that make a 13.5, a 15, a 16.5. So I can get you to the right loft a lot of ways with SureFit hosel. And then I have 3 models with some different launch characteristics, so I can dial that in as well. So it's really important having that versatility, and I think that was what was really exciting a lot of the fitters and thus the players on tour is I have 3 great options in terms of look, feel, and launch, and now I can just kind of hone in the shot shape I want, the flight characteristics I want, and so having that versatility. And then, we didn't even talk about that we added 2 more adjustable CG locations on the 3. Again, from some tour player feedback that, again, as a fitter, tools get you and performance get you really excited to work on the tee. And so when you have stuff like that to work with, you just know that you're going to get the player better when you're done.
Well, it just makes your life easier if you can make those adjustments on the tee, not have to go do anything special for a player. And that's the great thing about the TSR lineup is all of the tools that JJ's using are tools that are available to fitters and players out in the field as well. And so when he talks about being able to take a player with our TSR 3-wood from neutral to a T2 location because maybe they were overdrawing it, that's something that you can do as well. And so the flexibility for us to be able to dial head weight up and down, to dial CG in, there's endless permutations to some extent when you consider all the shaft options as well. That's part of why we encourage everyone to go get fit, but we think model choice is a really important part of that and being able to give selection to players.
Yeah, and again, kind of like with the driver, the fairway woods kind of run along that same line where when you set down a TSR2 versus a TSR3, the shaping is really good on both. I don't think there's a thing where a player will set down a 2 or a 3 and say, oh, I really don't like one or the other, because it isn't that big of a difference when you look at them visually. Now, granted, they have different tech, and like you said, the adjustability of the 3, but setting them down, if you're looking for a certain launch window or shot shape, it isn't really going to matter which head you get into because both of them have a very similar shape in a way from address. When you set them down, they both look really good.
Yeah, I'd say, the 3, it harkens back. We had such exceptional feedback about one of our older shapes, actually, in our lineup, 906 F2. But 906 F2 in this day and age, it's a pretty small head shape. So Tom and the team actually took a 906 F2 and said, what would it look like if we just scaled it up? And that's essentially what TSR 3 is. And so it's a really tour-preferred classic pear shape. The TSR 2 fairway wood, it's more of a kind of a modern profile, but a little more extended front to back, just a little more confidence inspiring, a little deeper CG because of that. But between the 2, you'll still see some flight differences. So that 3 is going to be a little flatter trajectory. The 2 is going to get up in the air and go for sure. So depending on what your performance needs are, we think we have it within the lineup for you.
You probably saw when you were talking about the different settings. We had kind of asked, going back to the full score line, again, really clean, classic look at address to kind of match up with that, where, again, a lot of settings now look really, really clean to the player.
Yeah, no, they definitely did, and the other thing too is, I mean, when you move down, I mean, a lot of times I'm somebody who just put this year, I just put a 7-wood in the bag for the first time since probably high school.
Nation.
Yeah, well, so I ended up at TPI. I ended up with the 5-wood with a little bit more loft because it actually fit my gap better. But it was the other interesting thing is when you get down to those 5, 7, the higher lofted fairways. Again, when as a player who, I mean, I don't want to call myself a better player because I'm not, but to being able to set those down and they look really good. And I think, with so many people now, especially on tour, putting in these high lofted fairway woods, I think, the amateur side of it, we're seeing a lot of people ask about trying them. But I think, the TSRs look so good when you even get down to those 5s and 7s because they don't just look like super, you don't just see a ton of face. I mean, it's a great shape. And maybe the part of the scoring lines help with kind of how much loft you see on the head. But, I mean, those have to be much, much more popular than they were a couple of years ago. I mean, I'm expecting, TSR 5 and 7 was to kind of really fly off the shelves now that, we're seeing such validation on tour.
Yeah, again, I think you'd be amazed how much time is spent on sole shaping, toe shaping, how it sits, and a lot of time in very nuanced details to make those look right. But yeah, we've been on about a 4 or 5 year run on the Titleist side in 7-woods. I think you're actually seeing some competitors try to catch up that didn't even have the loft in that space that are trying to get there because it's been so popular. They've done such a good job in terms of the ball speed, CG locations, and the look on that product that it becomes an incredibly versatile club. I mean, Max Homa's one of my favorite 7-wood stories in that he was playing at Torrey Pines and his caddy kind of poked me and was like, our 2-iron's just not going to cut it here. It hasn't really cut it at a bunch of places, but can you show Max something, maybe in a hybrid? And I'm like, can I bring something else? And I brought a hybrid and a 7-wood out, and the smile his caddy Joe had on his face when the 7-wood got hit. And Max is like, well, I'm just going to use it this week. Then the 2-iron's back, and I don't know. The 2-iron hasn't made a return except for the Open since. So,
makes sense. Course conditions, right?
Yeah. So, he became a big-time convert to full-time 7-wood usage from it because you can do so many things. It's easy out of the rough. You can launch it really high into par 5s. It's not just a one-trick pony. So it's definitely when you're going through your fitting, that's a spot of the bag we spend a lot of time with tour players on, so I would definitely encourage any of your listeners that when they're getting fit, say, hey, after the driver and 3-wood, show me kind of what's next.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what is it about? Like, I mean, I know, hybrids, and they still are. I mean, a lot of people still have a ton of hybrids in the bag, but what is it right now that it seems like it was kind of almost about a year ago or so that all of a sudden we started seeing a lot of these 5 and 7-woods go into bag. What's really changed about is it the tech going into these higher lofted fairway woods? What is it about them that all of a sudden have become so popular, not only on tour, but like I said, again, in amateur bags that they're showing up more now than they ever have before?
I think part of it comes down to hybrids and fairway woods are uniquely different in terms of CG positions, overall build specification, length. So if you're a player that can hit a golf club in that set of the bag more like an iron, a hybrid is a really good option for you because, if you can trap it more, the ball goes up in the air a little bit better. But a fairway wood or a higher lofted fairway wood in particular, it's built a little bit longer. You get a little bit more dynamic from the shaft and from the center of gravity position being deeper. So it naturally wants to go higher as a product of the golf club and the way that that's built. So there's some differentiation in terms of how people use those golf clubs and have success with them. So you can get to very similar distances, I would say, between them, but the trajectories can be significantly different. And so when I see players putting 7-woods in the bag, a lot of it comes down to being able to get that angle of descent and really be able to hold it into greens. And that's what's been able to help them a lot.
Yeah, I mean, on the PGA Tour or I guess any worldwide tour, we've seen some greens starting to firm up, some length added. There's more shots in that range, so players are looking for a little steeper angle of descent. And then there's other players like a Cameron Young who plays a TSI2 hybrid because he's looking for versatility, something that he can launch from the fairway but also flight off the tee. So I think for an average player, if you're feel a little bit better about your iron game, there's some hybrid options for you. If you feel a little bit better about your fairway wood game and need some height, those higher lofted fairway woods can be a really good spot. But the big thing is choices in that spot of your bag and then finding what works.
Even including utility irons in that
we
conversation.
have U505, we have T200, we have a lot in that space. And again, at a tour event, we will spend a lot of time looking at your longest iron and your shortest fairway wood and how do we fit that space so that, I mean, it's amazing, even tour players, but the number of consumers I hear, I never hit that club. You only get 14. You might as well go find one so you can play with all 14. It's hard to be in that club championship match and you're down a club on the first tee.
I think it's always interesting, too, when you share about when players switch out that part of their bag because of course conditions and setup, that some weeks it'll be a 7-wood, some weeks it'll be, a 2-iron. Another week it'll be a hybrid, and it really, I think that's something that, golfers in general don't really consider so much based on where they play their golf most often.
Yeah, a lot of our tour players will travel with 16 golf clubs. They'll travel with their normal driver 3-wood, but then they're going to do a 7-wood hybrid or a 7-wood utility iron, and then normally 2 lob wedges, one for firm and one for softer conditions. So it's an interesting thing that the best players in the world are using equipment to help them travel, and that a number of consumers go, well, when I get away from my home course, I struggle, but never think that equipment can help them.
Yeah, no, it's true. So what I mean, this has been awesome. First, I want to ask each of you, what's in the bag in terms of TSR woods? Or what are you playing? Driver? What's your setup? Stephanie, what do you got in the bag?
I have got a TSR2 11 degree, so I'm a pretty low spin player, so I need all the loft I can get, but been hitting bombs with it. I love it. And I've got the TSR2 16.5 and TSR2 21 degree fairway woods. So the 7-wood has been incredible. I love it. It just gets up in the air, and I can, if I'm off of an iffy lie, it's the perfect golf club for me to hit, for sure.
Love it. JJ, what do you got?
I'm TSR 210 R2 because I don't play that often, so I like to be able to scatter and use the entire face when I do play. 16.5 TSR 3-wood and TSR 221 7-wood.
Nice. Yeah, so I went TSR 2 10 degree, just B1 little flat because I tend to stop rotating the hips and I tend to hook it a little bit, and then I actually went 15 degree, and we took actually a little bit of loft off it for some reason. I can't remember. I think it was just getting the launch condition right. So I went TSR2 15 degree, and then instead of the 7-wood, which I really wanted, we actually ended up going 5-wood and adding a little loft because the gapping just worked out better. So adding a little loft. So it just over the gapping. The 7-wood wasn't quite as far as I wanted it to go, and the 5-wood hit it perfectly. So the number I was looking for was there. So I'm a TSR2 driver, 3-wood, and I guess strong 5-wood in a sense, or weak 5-wood
for you.
So, yeah, 6-wood. There you go. Exactly. Little in betweener. So
6-wood makes them sound more unique. I like it.
Now you got to golf with your RX bag because you have a 6-wood.
Well, now I need to get a custom 6-wood head cover somehow. I got to go get one made. So, but no, they've been really good. But I will say that like I said, the 3-wood's been really good. I know right when I left, we told a story about like an old classic 3-wood, and I was out playing on Saturday with my dad. I played terrible, but I hit 3-wood really well off the tee and off the deck. So there was one bright spot to my game on Saturday, and 3-wood was it. So it was a pleasant surprise. So.
Glad to hear it.
But I want to thank you, Stephanie and JJ. Thank you so much for your time today. This was awesome. I know a lot of people are super excited to go out, get their hands on TSR woods and try them out, get fit, hit them, all that. So I think the next few weeks are going to be pretty busy for you guys over there, building clubs and building custom orders and all that stuff. So you guys definitely won't be getting a ton of sleep in the next few weeks.
Well, we can't wait for players to get to experience it.
So
thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, guys.
Take care.